All right, folks. Dr. T back here. As we continue with AP African American Studies, and we're about to go over one of my favorite topics here. Talk about Black Studies, Black Futures, and Afrofuturism. So, if you never heard about this, we're about to get into it. As always, make sure you're taking good focus notes. Mind map, Cornell, outline, or Z notes. And if you want some extra credit at the end, give me a visual essay. Our next class meeting on this topic. And with this being, should be like very visual, like make like do what it do on this one, like really go out. And a visual essay is not a PowerPoint, folks, just what we know that as well. All right, let's get it. So today, what we mainly want to focus in here on today is going to be this notion of, again, Afrofuturism. That's my favorite right here. This is what we really focusing on, Afrofuturism, and we're gonna make sure we talk about how to make an argument. Also, just understanding this notion of understanding the knowledge and concepts of what we're talking about today. We need to understand what we're talking about. We need to have a clear understanding of that. In fact, all right. So what we want to do now is go ahead and really kind of get into 4.21, explain how the discipline of African American studies has contributed to interdisciplinary studies and academic studies in general. As you probably should know by this point here in this class here, we have been doing everything from art to literature to, I'm not gonna say math, but we've been anything in the social sciences as well. So we've really been hitting a lot of different broad strokes of things. So African American studies as a whole emerged from Black artistic, intellectual, and political endeavors of the time period. In the 21st century, it continues to offer a lens into understanding contemporary Black freedom struggles within and beyond the academy. Again, I went to San Francisco State University where Black studies started. When now, this is a little background story. When I graduated, my degree says Bachelor's of Arts in Black Studies. I was the last graduating class. The year after that, they moved over to Africana Studies. I have no gripe with that, but the idea that we moved away from the idea of calling it Black Studies from me and other individuals that came through the program was like, really, this is what we're doing? We're changing it? And this was in 2006. Now, so sometimes when you hear me call it Black Studies, African American Studies, same thing, just kind of interchanged them. So Black Studies remains a primary means to examine both global influence of Black expression and also racial inequalities. The field establishes framework for analysis of Black history, literature, politics, and other subjects not previously included in more traditional subjects. Now, as you may recall, this is something that we have long been discussing as far as how to make Black Americans and those of the diaspora the center of the conversation instead of being the subject of being there, which is a part of Afrocentric theory, making the Black experience be the center of the conversation instead of being the topic of conversation, if you will. All right, let's go ahead and listen to this video real quick and just talk about Afrofuturism and Black Panther. Now, Black Panther was really that first film that really kind of came out and really discussing this. Now, this is a lecture video, but of course, you need to go in to do this on your own and make sure you answer these questions in your notes in this case here, or just do it in Nearpod. So let's listen up, y'all.
As the Black Panther excitement spreads, Afrofuturism is an increasingly hot topic, but it's not new. In fact, it's been around for decades. First named in 1994 by cultural critic Mark Deary, Afrofuturism is a vibrant cultural movement exploring Afrocentric themes through the lens of sci-fi, fantasy, and steampunk. And it's been around for well over a century. But Afrofuturism isn't just sci-fi with Black characters. It's a thematic, future-forward exploration of the experience of being Black, and it crosses platforms, art forms, and disciplines. Edward Johnson's 1904 novel, Light Ahead for the Negro, is about an African-American man who travels into the future and discovers a socialist, egalitarian, post-racist America. The book is widely considered to be one of the earliest literary Afrofuturist works. Profound technological advances in mid-century America, we're talking everything from atom bombs to television sets, gave rise to expanded Afrofuturistic exploration in music, art, and on screen. Musicians like Sun Ra and Lee Scratch Perry were among the earliest Afrofuturistic influencers. In Ra's case, claiming to be descended from aliens, and tasked with preparing Earth for its eventual cosmic liberation. This simultaneous reclaiming of both the past and the future is a central theme in Afrofuturism, and one that's taken up in many ways. Just look at Wakanda, an African nation that has avoided the ravages of war, oppression, and colonialism to become the most technologically advanced human civilization in the Marvel Universe. In fact, Black Panther encompasses many central themes to Afrofuturism, such as feminism, alienation, and reclamation. One need only look at their female-populated military force, the Dora Milaje, to see themes of feminism and African culture. While Black Panther is the latest and maybe most visible Afrofuturist movie to hit theaters, it follows a long line of like-minded films, such as Space is the Place, The Brother from Another Planet, Blade, and Afronauts. Music is one of the richest platforms for Afrofuturism, with artists like George Clinton, Jimi Hendrix, and Afrika Bambaataa paving the way for musicians of the 21st century. Janelle Monáe, Erykah Badu, Missy Elliott, FKA Twigs, Flying Lotus, and Outkast are just examples of a few musicians who have imbued their work with Afrofuturist themes and aesthetics. So what's your favorite example of Afrofuturism in film, television, or music? For Hit Fix on Uprocks, I'm Steve Vasquez.
Now, I hope this also helps you as you're doing your projects. I know some of you are doing things dealing with hip hop and music, as far as now maybe you want to bring in this idea of Afrofuturism. So now, 4.21b is going to explain how Afrofuturism envisions Black lives in futuristic environments. So Afrofuturism is a cultural, aesthetic, and political movement that blends Black experiences from the past with Afrocentric visions of the technological advanced future that includes data, science, forecast, and AI. I will honestly argue that any student that's of Black American or African American ancestry, when you're doing STEM, you also are kind of taking this idea of Afrofuturism to the next step, because me as being a meteorology major, yes, remember I studied a lot of different things in school, Black studies, meteorology, and poli sci. But me being a meteorology major, so when I was doing my forecast, I was also trying to look at things from a different perspective, as far as coming from Afrocentric perspective. Like, so when I was looking at rain shows that will hit the hills of Oakland, California, why is it that this side here gets more rain compared to this side? And also, why is it that maybe the housing is cheaper on this side? Oh, you know why? Because they flood more. That's taking that same idea, our argument, to the same next step. So Afrofuturism is a future-facing, boundless exploration of Black life through the lens of Black people. Again, taking the idea of Afrocentric theory, meaning you make the Black folks the center of the conversation. It imagines new possibilities for Black people through the intersections of art, music, film, and fashion, and also in literature. Additionally, it spans areas of economics, law, policy development, implementation. So when we're talking about all these different rounds of AP American Studies, Afrofuturism really kind of is like the top of the cake, talk about how we look at everything. And again, like we just said, Black Panther was just the very newest example of how that got played, both in the first film and also now we're looking in 2024, the second film. It still goes into the idea of how you have this one African nation that has superior technology and they're using things to help propel them to the next level. Also, is very centered to the idea of feminism, as far as women having a very key role in their society and their development. So let's keep looking this between Afrofuturism and standard science fiction, because Afrofuturism is not science fiction. While focusing on technology, Afrofuturism is about ancient African traditions and Black identity. Again, think about some of the images that we saw when we watched Black Panther. To be Afrofuturism, the story, the work of art must have roots in Black culture. And that includes a person of African ancestry being at the root of the hymn behind it. All right, so Afrofuturist work date as far back as the early 1900s. Through the movement's characteristics, works emerged through the 1970s onwards, including music from Sun Ra, George Clinton, novels by Octavia Butler, Samuel L.R. Dinley, and of course, films like Black Panther. Now, what Dr. Martin Luther King said to Nichelle Nicholas about Star Trek is empowering, and we're going to listen to that.
Uhura, you're the only one who can do it.
I was pleased that in those days, when you couldn't get even blacks on television, that I not only had a black, but a black woman and a black officer.
You are away from your post, Lester.
And that'll show them.
I told Gene after the end of the first season that I would not be returning to the show.
We terrified and overwrought.
that I wanted to return to my first love, which was musical theater. But I didn't know that meeting a Star Trek fan would change my life. I was told that fan wanted to meet me, and I turned and looked into the face of Dr. Martin Luther King. I was breathless. He says, "Yes, I'm the Trekker. I'm a Star Trek fan." And he told me that Star Trek was one of the only shows that his wife, Coretta, and he would allow their little children to stay up and watch. And thanked him, and I told him that I was leaving the show. All the smile came off his face, and he said, "You can't do that." He said, "Don't you understand that for the first time, we are seen as we should be seen? You don't have a black role. You have an equal role." And when I went back to work on Monday morning, I went to Gene's office and I told him what had happened over the weekend. And he says, "Welcome home. We got a lot of work to do."
And she later became one of the most well-known characters and actresses on Star Trek. I remember watching it in the 80s and 90s with my mom and my grandma vividly. Didn't understand what I was watching, but it still makes sense now looking back at it. So you hear some more Afrofuturists. I mean, people you may know, hopefully all of you may know. Sun Ra, he was a jazz musician who worked on different elements of space and African traditions. Octavia Butler was a sci-fi writer who mostly dealt with Black women characters in futuristic and supernatural settings. Erykah Badu is a musician who uses elements of futurism and African tradition in her music. And Janelle Monáe, a musician who mixes elements of space and Black culture reference in her music. These are some examples. Can you think of some more, though? I want to ask you that. Can you think of some more examples and let me know? All right, Octavia Butler, Parable of the Sower. So listen to this. Cities controlled by big companies are old hat in science fiction. My grandmother left a whole bookcase of old science fiction novels. The company, city subgenre, always seemed to star a hero who outsmarted, overthrew, or escaped the quote company. I've never seen one where the hero fought like heck. Trying not to say hell, I just said it, to get taken in and underpaid by the company. In real life, that's the way it will be. That's the way it always is. So let that sink in for a second from Octavia. All right, so is Black Panther futuristic? Yes, Black Panther does work to undo stereotypes. It reclaims the past and reimagines a very different future. Black Panther takes place in a fictional African nation of Wakanda that is filled with advanced technology that is kept secret from the world. Black Panther makes direct reference to real cultures and traditions in Africa. Sci-fi, African history, and present culture and present fantasy are all combined in this one film. And this is why we'll be doing a deep analysis on the film as much class time we have available to do so. All right, so we watched the video. Let's talk about Black Panther. I also want to make sure you notice the film Space is a Place. Now, I want you to remember something about those pieces. I want to make sure I got that piece. I'm going to go back to it. Give me 1 second, y'all. It's a lifetime situation going on here. The poster film The Place of Space. This came out in 1974. 1 second. I'm trying to make sure I can pull it and make sure I can discuss a little bit more. And I'm gonna highlight that on the screen for you. Okay. Sorry, my computer's going extremely slow because it's an old computer. This is a very old school iMac that I'm working on right now, folks. I'm doing this recording, but you know what? It's also a very powerful computer too, but it's just slow at times. All right. All right. So what we're referring to here, as far as the place, is going to be when we have the picture of Sun Ra. So I'm gonna try to go back to it right here for you, can see it. There's an earlier slide. There, here, this piece right here. So this is the piece we're talking about. I want you to do right now is just quickly scan the poster and tell me what you notice. Think about words, visuals, things that come to mind while you're looking at it. Try to make sense of it. Where you think this is from, what is happening at the time of in history that this poster was created. Again, this is 1974. Who do you think is the intended audience? We also want to go back and look and say, why was it created? And then maybe list any evidence you may have from that, okay? All right, let's keep going. Okay. All right, so now this is one more video we're going to talk about as far as Afrofuturism. So listen up.
An exhibit on display in Washington is spreading the word about an intriguing marriage of science fiction and Black history. Nancy Giles gives us an inside look at Afrofuturism.
What is Afrofuturism?
The future of African Americans and their impact on society.
Afrofuturism is a vision for humanity.
I don't know what it would mean.
To answer that question, there's an exhibit at the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. Museum Director Kevin Young.
New worlds that you could imagine yourself in and imagine yourself different and better. And I think that's something African Americans have done for a long time. They've taken pain and turned it into possibility. And I think Afrofuturism is an extension of that.
From Harriet Tubman's leading enslaved people to freedom to the female mathematicians of NASA, the possibilities of Afrofuturism are woven throughout history.
I don't believe it.
Explain.
You explain.
Have Lieutenant Uhura's uniform. Nichelle Nichols wore this in Star Trek.
Lieutenant Uhura inspired real-life astronauts, including Charles Bolden, who went on to become the first Black NASA administrator. Also on display, the flight suit of young Trayvon Martin, who was part of an Experience Aviation science program and dreamed of flying high. Martin was gunned down at age 17 in an infamous Stand Your Ground case in Florida.
And to have it here, I think, is a reminder of his dreams and sort of all of our dreams cut too short.
Yeah. From music and movies to comic books, literature, and more,
Here we are.
Black artists take a more expansive view of a world where racism and oppression aren't the defining factors, traveling through time and space. Octavia Butler's visionary science fiction earned her a MacArthur Genius Fellowship.
I love what she says here. You got to make your own worlds. You got to write yourself in.
She is so right.
She sure did.
The first introduction of the
Curator Kevin Strait was inspired by this Oscar-winning costume.
We have right here an authentic Black hero.
It's the late Chadwick Boseman's costume from the 2018 blockbuster Black Panther. Boseman played the king of the futuristic country Wakanda.
I think people really connected to the notion of having a Black hero, a Black cast, in a Black setting. In many ways, sort of envisioned a new future.
Right, an empowering future.
Afrofuturism is dealing with the past. It's kind of reconciling the past. The first Afrofuturist was the first slave to decide that, you know what, this slavery thing's not for me. I'm going to get out of here.
John Jennings is a professor of cultural studies at the University of California, Riverside. We caught up with him at an Afrofuturistic period room at New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art. Jennings says Afrofuturists include icons like Tina Turner, President Barack Obama, and leaders of the civil rights movement.
I always look at Dr. King as Afrofuturist.
I have a dream today.
Afrofuturism is looking backwards to move forwards. I think it's a disservice to the past to forget it, you know?
Yes.
We have to actually understand where we've come from. For instance, don't think about the negative aspects of the past. Think about how much we've survived, right? Think about the positive aspects and move forward in a positive manner.
Afrofuturism encouraged enslaved Africans to follow the North Star to freedom. And in the 21st century, Afrofuturists continue to move the culture forward to a different way of thinking, to our own limitless Wakandas.
I think so much about bringing my son and his friends to see that movie and how much they took it for granted in a way that there could be this black hero. And that sense of heroism is part of, I think, Afrofuturism's power.
I would also add into that
An exhibit
Spider-Man
on display
into
in Washington is
the,
spreading the word about an.
Let me stop the video. Also add into that Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse might be another example of a good film. Actually, not another. It is, and it might, excuse me, not a might. It is definitely an example of this idea of Afro-futurism as well. All right, folks. So what you want to do now is go ahead and answer this exit ticket that's going to be available in the description of this video and for you to complete. So good luck. I hope you learn a little bit more. And again, I'd like for you to tell me some other examples of Afrofuturism that you may not even notice, but you might be more aware of after the end of this video. All right, y'all. Have a great one. Talk to you soon.